Right, so hello everyone. So this is mine and Louise's project. So we're going to be talking about enhancing the online learning environment in higher education and for specifically the Orthoptic BSc. So just to emphasise here, this project did start partly through the pandemic when we were starting to reflect on our teaching practice online and started to consider really how this could be improved given the lack of preparation time in it that we initially had. So we will be taking you briefly and quickly through this project by providing some background, then taking you on through the method, and then Louise will take you through the results and lastly on to the conclusion. So to provide you with a bit of context, the Orthoptic programme is a 3-year programme offered here at the university. Whilst prior to the pandemic we did still utilise some online learning in the form of pre-recorded e-lectures, many of our sessions required interactivity in the form of interactive lectures, tutorials, and also clinical skills sessions. So the pandemic forced us to adapt in a number of ways, moving to asynchronous and synchronous online lectures and tutorials. However, as we had a requirement to assess clinical competency, students were still able to attend clinical sessions on campus and also, where possible, clinical placement. Usually, with such a significant change in delivery, we would plan appropriately. However, the pandemic resulted in what has now been defined as sort of emergency remote teaching, where we had to really quickly adapt with little time for any preparation at all. What I really like is that one author accurately describes this as a bit of a pedagogical triage, which is right, really. We found ourselves doing the best we could given the circumstances and sort of muddling our way through. However, some issues started to arise with things like engagement, and then also the literature started showing that students on clinical programmes were being less exposed to clinical dialogues and experiences, which were negatively impacting on their learning. So in addition to the planning, we did not really envisage all the barriers to online learning that we'd also come across, and one of these was actually, interestingly, digital literacy. So I think we often assume that the current generation of undergraduates have a really good level of digital capabilities and assume they can adapt quicker in a digital learning environment. However, it's coming apparent that often these theories are more based on assumptions, with some studies finding that whilst the younger generations may have had more exposure to sort of technology, the way in which they actually use the technology every day may be different to the preferences in academic setting, and with many students not actually wanting technology to replace traditional teaching methods. So just as an example, other barriers to online learning exist, such as socioeconomic factors. To just provide you a brief example, research suggests that one of the barriers to online education is cost and availability of resources. With regards to this, we have found that a high proportion of students on the Orthoptic programme have access to a device for learning. However, the efficiency of the device and the connectivity is often unknown, and this struggle did come to light as well during the pandemic. And then lastly, just to touch on it, we will touch on our pedagogical foundations for our project. So as we wanted to look at enhancing the online environment and wanted to explore student views, it was appropriate really to explore the social learning theory. So this theory emphasises that behaviours are a result from both the social interaction of people and their environments. So the social interaction between learners, peers and the academic are required for learning to occur online. It's thought that if there is no interaction, then no learning will take place. Often online, social interaction is affected by the social presence of individuals as well. And in orthoptics, social presence is often questioned if students aren't sharing the cameras or the audio in a session, but actually does this really define social presence? Regardless though, if social interaction and social presence is absent, then social learning can't really be applied. So the aim of the study was to broaden our understanding of the online learning environment and obtain valuable information that may be able to enhance online learning for orthoptic students in the future. So to address those aims, we had a mixed method approach. We had a questionnaire and a focus groups. So for the questionnaire, undergraduate orthoptic students from all years were invited to complete an online questionnaire in around March 2021. On a number of questions, students were able to elaborate or explain their answers, and questions were based around accessibility, digital capabilities, support, asynchronous and synchronous sessions, engagement barriers and expectations. And then for the second part of the study, students were invited to participate in focus group, and we had 3 focus groups in total. Years were kept separate due to each year having a slightly different experience of the online environment. For example, year 1 only had experience of the online learning environment, whereas years 2 and 3 had already had previous experience of on-campus teaching. So I'm just going to pass you over to Louise.
Thanks, Ashley. So here are the results, a summary of the Likert scale questions from the questionnaire. 36 students answered the questionnaire, the majority being in that younger 18 to 24-year-old age group. About half of our students were studying from home and half were studying from campus. In the questions, all students had access to basic IT equipment, but this didn't always include a webcam or audio. Interestingly, while 90% agreed that they were confident in their digital capabilities, only 54% were confident with online learning. And this supports the idea that young people are considered digital natives. And in fact, that digital capability is not always transferred to the academic environment. Just moving on to the next slide. So we analysed the free text results of the questionnaire, and this fell into these categories. Regular contact from us directing students to support was what they wanted in terms of academic support, really good communication, directing them to the resources. In engagement, they preferred synchronous sessions due to the interaction that could be offered with a live session. If they were given asynchronous content, it was considered better. They said in these free text responses that if they had an interactive element to the asynchronous resource, it was better. Overall, a mixture of the two was preferred. So, for example, an asynchronous e-lecture followed by a synchronous tutorial was the best. They wanted guided facilitation to encourage participation, and they wanted that guided by us to improve their confidence. And they also, to support their learning, wanted support after the sessions, not just within the sessions, because they couldn't have that after session chat in the online environment that they would have had when we were having lectures on campus. We'll just move on to the focus group results. So there were 3 overarching themes that came through in the focus groups. On communication and organisation, the quality of the communication was really important. And what I mean by that is really clear, consistent communication, preferably on one platform, was discussed because they would struggle moving from place to place. Now, it needed to be clearer and consistent and really explicit, because they wouldn't have the face-to-face clarity. They wouldn't be able to sort out any ambiguities, so it needed to be really straightforward if you were given those communications online without being there for clarity. Clear presentation of the resources was requested in topic or date order, and if something did go a bit out of order, it really messed up their sort of learning. It hindered them, because they really needed it to be kind of in order, with so much things to organise themselves. If something was just not quite explicit enough, it could kind of put them off a bit. And good communication helps self-determination, motivation, and connection, and that was really coming through in the focus groups. On engagement, I was really excited to find out about engagement, because this is what we really want: engaged students. And there was lots of ideas and insight here into their engagement. They said they were reluctant to participate in whole group sessions because of their confidence. It was easier in smaller groups for them. Between the years, year 1 and 2 expressed more need for peer support, but they wanted it organised by us rather than by themselves. They wanted us to facilitate that. In terms of the size of the content, so bite-sized e-lectures, 30 to 45 minutes in length, was the ideal amount of time. And that in itself, just the length of the content, reduced distractions and helped motivation. Psychologically, they could tick that one off: I've done it, it's an achievement. Move to the next one and feel more, I'm getting through this and I'm doing well. Loneliness came through with some quotes. from the students. So particularly year 3 who could remember learning on campus and said really miss those in between lecture chats where we could talk about a really tough lecture and how you're struggling with a particular topic, whereas online it cuts off a bit more and they can't speak to each other kind of directly about that stuff, and they really missed that, and there was an element of loneliness there. In terms of academic support, and so unanimously face-to-face support is preferred, and that kind of consistent and continued communication with students who are kind of left online. And again, going back to that, organising themselves and having things in order and not being put out or hindered. Timely responses were really important to students, and I could understand that because kind of it would affect the flow of their learning. And a difference between the years was that year 1 and 2 expressed that they were quite happy to email us and wait for answers, whereas year 3 were looking up things themselves to find out the answer because they just wanted to get on, have the answer, move on to the next thing and consolidate what they were learning at the time. So moving on, how we use these and the conclusions, how we interpret what we've found. The findings really do support the social learning theory. We need effective communication to promote that social interaction. And this is fostered by the right environment. And the environment, I think, to a certain extent, we do have a bit of control over. While you can't make people engage, we can foster an environment that promotes it. And without that social presence, the students can't socially learn. So ideas for improvement, we need to set clear expectations to improve motivation and encourage interaction, really directed support to make students feel connected. Naturally, the hybrid environment, which is now in place, should help with those things and improve connection and belonging, but the hybrid approach is not without its challenges, and we do still have an online element where we can apply some of these findings to enhance social presence and interaction. So that concludes our findings. Thank you very much for listening.